Hi, and welcome to the Courtenay Turner Podcast. I'm your host, Courtenay, and I'm super passionate about moving and thinking. On this show, we are going to dive into all things health, fitness, personal development, lifestyle, and political sociocultural. I've always been fascinated by people, and I love learning from the experiences and stories of others. This has been a treat for me, and I hope this is enjoyable and useful for you. As always, if you have any questions, comments, or any way that I can make this a better experience for you, please don't hesitate to reach out. We have a treat. I'm in person today. I'm with Ari David.
Hi.
Hi, how are you? He's a fellow podcaster, the Ari David Show, and a conservative political media consultant. How are you doing?
I'm good. How about you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for joining me today.
Of course.
Yeah, so how have things been for you in this time?
Why? What do you mean? What's going on that I should know about? Did something happen?
Well,
I'm confused.
Yeah, I know. It's been very, very normal. It's been, 2020 is the most normal year I've ever had. I mean, I spent my entire life in front of a screen. Like I said, this is the first in-person I'm doing. Actually, I think might be the second or third. But it's very rare that I see people in person these days. I live kind of on Zoom. So,
yeah.
Yeah, which is not ideal. It's sub-ideal.
No, it's been, besides the strangeness of the year, I'm having a hard time coping because I'm not a creature of tyranny. So I don't know how to live in a world in which my liberty is constricted daily in new and horrible, nefarious ways.
Yeah.
So that's sort of the general sense of my experience.
Yeah, I feel a lot of that. I don't think that any human beings actually are creatures of tyranny. Do you think there are people who are?
Well, it's interesting. I had a friend who used to say freedom's not for everyone. And I had no idea what he was talking about because that concept was completely alien to me. What I think is that there are people who, by conditioning or culture or some other thing, are not comfortable with taking responsibility in the totality of their lives. So when a Democrat mayor or governor or some bureaucrat like Fauci comes out and says, your life will be absolutely fine if you just do this. And because they have no way of referencing that with historical events or other things, and they don't see slippery slopes, or they're not familiar with the concept of never again, they don't see the seriousness or the nefarious nature of those dictates or advisements.
Right. That's interesting. I mean, I really believe all human beings are designed to be free. That's why we have free will. And, therefore, but I understand your point. That's that a lot of people don't want to take responsibility. And so, what was Ben Franklin's quote that, people who trade a bit of security for liberty, then they deserve neither. So, yeah. But there are definitely people who don't want to take responsibility, personal responsibility, so they're willing to hand it over. And we have people who are very happy to take those freedoms away and to, in return, tell you what you can and can't do. It's particularly here. We've seen, in California, in LA. I feel like this year it's been the worst. I'm contemplating leaving because I don't think I can live like this much longer.
Yeah, like the citizens of North Korea would say, I can't live like an insect. And they treat you like you're an insect. Yeah. Like you're a brainless little drone, and your job is simply to be herded from place to place and to be tested or injected or have experiments done upon you. And that's what, for instance, the vaccines are. It's a mass. It's the pharmaceutical industry's dream of being able to do a cost-free, liability-free mass human experiment for the first time in history. And the same people, Democrats, liberals, the enlightened brethren who share our space, the ones who have been complaining about the power of corporations or the corruption of pharmaceutical companies, seem to be so content just to give every break or trust in these people that, a few months ago they tell us how corrupt they were. Right. But now a mass experiment is being done on their bodies, and no longer do they believe in my body, my choice, or any of that.
Right.
It's simply, here, take this. And if you object to it, you're not a feminist or my body, my choice, free choice person. You're now a problem.
Right. Yeah. So what can we do about this? How can people take back their liberties? How can people, exercise their freedoms and regain our freedoms?
Oh, well, I think the way people regain their freedoms is by not waiting for government to give it back. I mean, freedom is held by the individual, and it's only removed by the allowance of the individual. I mean, after all, we voluntarily gave them 2 weeks to flatten the curve. We didn't voluntarily give them 11 months to shut our restaurants down and close our schools and engage in elder and child abuse.
Right.
So, like, for instance, my kids, as you saw when you came over, are stuck at home. Right? They want to go back to school.
Sure.
Our school, and I'm not going to get into all the minutia of it, but our school is essentially waiting with the attitude of mother may I for the government to allow them, to deign them worthy of open. And I said to the school administrators, open.
Yeah.
Take your control back.
Yeah.
But they'll fine us. They'll shut us down. Well, don't let them shut you down. Reopen again. Don't pay the fine. Meet them in court. Sue them.
Yes.
Take your liberty. We hear over and over, I believe you're intimating that point. Well, when is someone going to do something?
Yeah.
Well, I'm doing something, you're doing something, but people in levels of authority in private life, just above us, the gym owners, the restaurant owners, the people who run schools, private and public, they're the ones not doing anything.
Yes.
For various reasons.
Yeah.
Fear, they're on the side of the government, they believe the nonsense, whatever.
Right.
But I'm doing my best as a consumer to either act locally or vote with my feet, because like you said, you're thinking of leaving, we're thinking of leaving. All options have to be on the table.
Right.
But like right after the election, or more specifically, right after the fraudulent inauguration, friends...
The arrogation, as I've been calling it,
whatever you want to call this lunacy. The One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest senior living hospice care regime that we have in Washington, Biden, Pelosi, Schumer, all these octogenarians. I said, similar to that thing with the schools, find a little plot of liberty that you can carve out, where you own the freedom of.
Right.
Carve it out, own it, and expand it. Yeah. So if I went to a coffee place today, I call it Cuckold's Coffee, because there are horns on the A of the thing. So I got my cup of cuckold coffee today, and I put on my mask to stand in line to order my drink, as is required. Yeah. But then, unlike the other drones at Cuckold's Coffee, I take off my mask.
Sure.
And I leave my mask off until the gender ambiguous proctor and barista assistant brings my beverage to the front desk.
Right.
And then I will put it on at the last minute. They talk about this in Arab countries where women have to wear the hijab, and women figure out little ways of uncovering like a little piece of hair here, a little piece of flesh there, a little more of their eyes here.
Sure.
And it's incrementalism. And it's because the women in those countries, and in those countries I'm a complete feminist for them,
right, of course,
carve out a little bit of control where they can.
Of course.
So it's important we look at our lives and say, well, where can I carve out control? Can I take off the mask for these few more minutes and still get my cuckold cup of cuckold coffee? I really love that term. As you can see, I'm overusing it. But it's things like that.
Yeah.
And it's the ultimate form of personal responsibility of saying, I'm going to own this and I'm going to expand this.
Right.
And when you try to stop me, you will meet my resistance to this.
Yeah. How do you think we got here? I feel like it's such an upside down world. And to me, I feel like I'm just living in this, like, it looks like a lie. I keep saying I feel like I'm caught in this dystopian video game, and I keep waiting to beat, like, Ganon or something. It's all over, but it's not. It just keeps getting worse and worse. And it's very hard for me, it's the ultimate gaslighting. It's like I keep looking at grass and thinking it's green and keep being told, no, it's red, and you have to believe it's red. So it's very extreme to someone like me. So I'm wondering, what do you think? How do you think we got this far? Because a lot of people are so, like you said, there is incrementalism, and within incrementalism, people start to accept things. So for a lot of people, like you were saying, that they, they're happy to give up their freedom. It's just a mask. They'll wear the mask. It's just shut down my business for 2 weeks or 11 months or whatever it is. But to me, that's very extreme. How do we get to the point where so many people are that complacent? And
well, we got here through various ways. I mean, we've been voting such and such way for the bad guys. And it's not just one party. One party is worse than the other, but the Republican establishment of Mitt Romney technocrats, or as I call them, Willard Hussein Romney or Bitch McConnell or any of these other jerks, who needs Democrats with Republicans like that? So it's not a party thing. Right. It's a general corruption thing at the political level. And then at the cultural level, I mean, we could point to a lot of things. I mean, the lack of masculinity, the pussification and sissification of everyone, males and females. Yeah. The lack of rugged individualism, the way life is so good in America that we've truly, in the aggregate sense of our culture, grown incredibly soft. I mean, how many pussies are there out there? Yeah. How many guys, when you go to a place like Cuckold's Coffee, walk out and they're wearing flip-flops, skinny jeans, and you can just see the estrogen level in their bloodstream being like, they're essentially, women. And I say that in the derogatory sense of women, not the strong, beautiful women like Marilyn Monroe or something, or Sarah Connor from the Terminator movies, but, this thing. And it's, and then becoming debased from our culture. The notion that we have to tear down statues because we're too sensitive to even observe or know the past, right? Lost our connection, let alone to the Constitution, but even more to the Declaration of Independence. When I was a kid, you used to have to memorize the Declaration of Independence and argue the points, point by point, both for and against. You used to have to argue, what did John Adams and Thomas Jefferson in the Declaration of Independence mean when they talked about the stationing of British troops being forced to station in our homes? Right. Why would the British find that necessary? Right? Wow. Why would the colonists object? Right? And then that would connect over to the Constitution, to the Third Amendment. People know the First, the Second, the Fourth, the Fifth, but the Third Amendment is it bans it bans the forced quartering of troops in a citizen's home. Well, we got here through various ways. I mean, we've been voting such and such way for the bad guys. And it's not just one party. One party is worse than the other, but the Republican establishment of Mitt Romney technocrats, or as I call them, Willard Hussein Romney or Bitch McConnell or any of these other jerks, who needs Democrats with Republicans like that? So it's not a party thing. Right. It's a general corruption thing at the political level. And then at the cultural level, I mean, we could point to a lot of things. I mean, the lack of masculinity, the pussification and sissification of everyone, males and females. Yeah. The lack of rugged individualism, the way life is so good in America that we've truly, in the aggregate sense of our culture, grown incredibly soft. I mean, how many pussies are there out there? Yeah. How many guys, when you go to a place like Cuckold's Coffee, walk out and they're wearing flip-flops, skinny jeans, and you can just see the estrogen level in their bloodstream being like, they're essentially, women. And I say that in the derogatory sense of women, not the strong, beautiful woman like Marilyn Monroe or something, or Sarah Connor from the Terminator movies, but, this thing. And it's, and then becoming debased from our culture. The notion that we have to tear down statues because we're too sensitive to even observe or know the past, right? Lost our connection, let alone to the Constitution, but even more to the Declaration of Independence. When I was a kid, you used to have to memorize the Declaration of Independence and argue the points, point by point, both for and against. You used to have to argue, what did John Adams and Thomas Jefferson in the Declaration of Independence mean when they talked about the stationing of British troops being forced to station in our homes? Right. Why would the British find that necessary? Right? Wow. Why would the colonists object? Right? And then that would connect over to the Constitution, to the Third Amendment. People know the First, the Second, the Fourth, the Fifth, but the Third Amendment is it bans it bans the forced quartering of troops in a citizen's home. Now, why would that be important, right? Mm-hmm. Well, because I don't want troops quartered in my home. But notice this. That's been a non-issue in America probably for 150 years. Mm-hmm. So much of a non-issue, the Third Amendment is never even discussed, nor should it need to be, right? Because it's so obvious. Right. But look what's happening today. Mm-hmm. Contact tracing. Yep. California, in Ventura County specifically, was experimenting with contact tracers when someone was a positive China flu testee. Their contacts were traced through their smartphone location services, and the county was going to send a contact tracing expert, mostly a social justice warrior kind of minded person, to station themselves in the house of a potential infectee. Does that sound exactly like stationing a troop in your house against your will? Yeah. A violation of your Third Amendment right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I didn't know that it went that far.
Well, they're talking about what's the nth degree of contact tracing,
right?
Along with a forced vaccination. And I think California's counties backtracked on this real fast when word started getting out how creepy this is.
Yeah.
And this is not right-wing QAnon fantasy, right. Costume play. This is actually what the governor was talking about in April, May, June, July of last year. He hasn't mentioned it since. Good. For various reasons. But isn't that interesting how you have a population so debased from the two founding documents, the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, that people are just unaware of what stationing people in your home against your will means, why it's an important thing to consider, why it's an outlined constitutional right. Number 3, behind protecting yourself and free expression.
Absolutely.
And that's an example of it.
Yeah, that's amazing because our education has veered so far from that. Most people don't even read the Constitution when they're in school. I didn't. I have since, but I didn't when I was in school. And most people I know now definitely don't. And I think that's I was thinking about it when I was watching some of the impeachment trial, and I was thinking how I don't think most of these people have even read the Constitution, which is completely disgraceful. Yeah,
especially when they've sworn an oath to defend it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's their job. That's why they have the job they have.
Yeah.
I mean, how strange is that? You've sworn an oath to this of allegiance to defend this document.
Right.
You've become imbued with incredibly omnipotent powers in this modern, expansive government era.
Sure.
And you don't even know what your primary purpose is.
Right, you don't know what.
So you're impeaching a guy who's not even an elected official without the Supreme Court Chief Justice presiding over it.
Right.
You have all of these Sixth Amendment rules about fair juries of your peers, and that judges, juries, and executioners can't be the same person. The prosecutor isn't the jury. The prosecutor isn't the judge. And now they're all acting in commingled quasi-fantasy identifiable states.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah, and the other thing that really struck me is, you're talking about how far removed they are from the founding documents that comprise this country and this country was predicated upon. But there's also, when I was watching it, it really struck me how these are supposed to be what you would think of as like the, masters of argument and compelling and cogent arguments, and so therefore they should have this really masterful command of the English language. And I feel like that has so deteriorated over the years. You look at our founding fathers and what they wrote, what they read. I think there's been a deterioration, and I'm wondering what you think of that. Do you think that's do you think that's intentional? Do you think that's part of why people are so readily, amenable to all the propaganda machines that there are? That's why the fear is so easy to spread, and it's so easy to get people to be compliant?
Well, I'm a simple person who looks for simple explanations when they're available. And there is no way a thinking person can conclude that the results of the education system as it's currently structured are anything but deliberate. And the perfect way to kind of look at this is the following. There's a show that they still show on PBS locally here in LA and in California with a guy named Huell Hauser. You ever see it, California's Gold or whatever? It's a little show that if you search around PBS, you'll find it. It involves this folksy guy from Tennessee, Huell Hauser, who in the mid-'80s started doing shows for PBS about different issues of California, all sorts of things, the Golden Gate Bridge, the Griffith Observatory, the Hollywood sign, anything you can imagine. You know, things that are both famous and obscure. And one day, Huell Hauser, and he spends a lot of the episodes doing this, and his show was on for 30 years almost. He goes to the high Sierras, to some of those old mining towns, and goes into a mining museum. And then he does the same thing when he goes to Sacramento and goes into the archives of the California kind of document history. And he brought out letters written from the gold miners. Now this is interesting, because think about this. This is life in the 1800s in America, and there's these people who are coming from, whether it's the eastern part of the country where there were more things, because it was the older part of the country that was more developed, and they're coming to the great unknown, the West. And what kind of person would do that? A person who has everything, or someone, let's just say, desperate, right? The conclusion is it would be a desperate person. Because what kind of person would give up life in a city to scratch out back-breaking work in the wilderness in the hopes of finding some metal that they could dig out of the ground that's more valuable than the rocks around it? Right? It's a high-risk proposition. So these are kind of, you know, not the glitterati of the 1840s and 50s, if you will, right? These aren't the nomenclatura, the people of high society with the educations and the, you know, captains of industry. These are desperate people trying to scratch out a living in a faraway life to have a better life for themselves. But what's interesting is the penmanship in the letters. Perfect handwriting. No crosses out. No scribbles. No, I spelled your, Y-O-U-R, and I meant to do Y-O-U apostrophe R-E. No, it's perfect. The penmanship, the alliteration, the skill is, as far as being a person of letters, was off the chart. And you ask yourself, well, where were they educated? And the answer, probably at home, probably from mom and pop, probably from reading some of the classics they had in their house, like the Bible and maybe Magna Carta, maybe the founding documents of America's founding, maybe some Herman Melville, maybe some Nathaniel Hawthorne and some Henry David Thoreau, and probably educated at most by a school marm in a one-room classroom, full of kids of all different ages. But somehow they have that kind of reading and writing skill, simply in their letters. And then when you read the letters and you see the content of the letters, the clarity of thought was also jumps off the page. So you ask yourself, how much in, let's just say, Los Angeles do we spend per student in public school, the low-end school? And the answer is like $23,000 a year. Okay, how much did the education system spend on educating the minor 49ers? Not a dime. And so, how much money are you spending to get Pookie not being able to read, write, compute at grade level, or think? And the conclusion has to be, it must be deliberate. Someone, and then ask yourself, of course, who's benefiting from Pookie not being able to read, write, benefit, and think? The school-to-prison pipelines? Yes. The education system with the lazy teachers and the teachers union that can ask for ever more money? Yes. The principals, the school districts, the politicians, Democrats who benefit from having people be stupid, who then vote for them? Yes. People who are stupid are more subject to emotional, let's just say, fluctuations and are easily inflamed, and they're the kind of people who are going to scream at you on the street for not wearing a mask on a sunny day when the wind is blowing. You know, so you can see it's a well, just to give it a full arc, what is the deliberate end game? It's to bring about tyranny by having an uninformed population that is then hateful of anyone who lives in liberty, like you and I.
Right, right. And so there, by that logic, the way to combat this would be to have education, teach critical thinking. What are your thoughts?
My thought would be to tear the whole damn thing down and start with the basics. Yeah. If the minor 49ers were educated with the Bible, with Milton, with Paradise Lost, with Geoffrey Chaucer, the great classics, Shakespeare, Wycherley, the Enlightened Age, the Iliad and the Odyssey, the writings of Homer, in Latin and Greek, by the way, not even in English.
Right.
Perhaps that's what kids should be forced to learn. Oh, that's too hard. Really? So people hundreds of years ago, without running water, electric light, internet connectivity, were able to learn these things, and you, Pookie, with your iPhone and your $500 Nikes can't?
Right.
Well, who's the racist here? Who's saying me, hey, Pookie, the black kid from Compton, can achieve great things, and who are the racists saying, no, Pookie's as dumb as a slave, don't even try, give up on him?
I just saw yesterday they're trying to promote mathnocentricity. I don't know, it's like ethnomathematics.
Ethnocentric math, where there are no correct answers. Where 2 + 2 equals you're a racist, right?
Yeah.
How
is that not racist, first of all, and how is that benefiting anybody?
That's right. It is the true manifestation of the bigotry of low expectations. Right. I mean, who's the real racist? The Democrats who believe black people, brown people, Muslim people, white people. White people are unable to overcome their inherent biases. Black people are just too stupid to do math. Latinos are too stupid not to be gardeners. Who's the racist? We're the ones saying, you know what? Any human being can achieve when effort and enlightenment is applied and provided. Right. I hate the idea, the communist, socialist, if you will, idea that XYZ tangible service or product is a right. But considering how much we pump into the education system of taxpayer money, it's one of the few things the Founding Fathers said, you know what, the government should subsidize this or provide it because, for instance, by them providing libraries, right? The idea being that an unenlightened population will devolve into a tyrannical one, like we're experiencing.
Yeah.
So if we're going to say education is a right, well, if it's a right, well, then we should supply the right kind of education now, shouldn't we?
Yes, absolutely.
So I would, go back to pure basics. Teach penmanship from a young age. Teach the enlightened scholars of the age. Teach that Western civilization has freed people from tyranny and hasn't enslaved them. Yeah. That slavery is a condition throughout the world. I would ask the question because so often we hear arguments against colonialism and imperialism. I'd say, well, what exactly is not colonizing about Marxist theory, which originated from an Austrian guy who came upon his ideas in a Parisian cafe and then has infected most of Southeast Asia with a backwards ideology that is actually destructive to human societies. Why is it indigenously correct for the Chinese to live by a communist system? What is not culturally appropriating about Pol Pot forcing Cambodians to live under the philosophies of Karl Marx?
Yeah. Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And they are teaching, you were talking about the education system and the Marxism, and I think they're teaching the kids here to hate Western civilization, and that is so damaging. There's no, if you hate what you've grown up in, how are you supposed to move forward? How are you supposed to thrive?
Oh, how are you supposed to improve something you hate?
Exactly.
If I hate something, I destroy something. I don't. I can love things that are flawed. A perfect example is your children. We all say, "Oh, we're born perfect." Oh, bull, you know what? Okay, children are born knowing not literally nothing, but just about nothing. Right. They know how to defecate, breathe, and swallow.
Right.
Later on, they learn to listen and hear and see a little bit and make sense of their world. But none of us are born perfect.
Of course.
Right? So if we look at our civilization with the same look, same perspective we had for our children are, if you will, born flawed.
Right.
They are born without information. But we love them, so we imbue them slowly but surely, incrementally as we can, with information.
Right.
Values, knowledge, logic, wisdom, right?
Yeah.
If we hated our children, we wouldn't teach them anything. We would put them out in the wilderness to die, or we would abort them, right? Or some other things. So we have people who are, if you will, the children or the caretakers of a society with the desire, like Black Lives Matter or Antifa, to literally abort a society.
Yeah.
In literal terms.
Yeah.
It's not a hyperbolic statement. And then we're surprised.
Given the Nobel Prize, or nominated for the Nobel Prize.
Right.
Yeah.
And then we're surprised that this set of attitudes results in an aborted society in which, there's little parts of it here, little parts of it there. None of it's functioning. The vital organs are removed and just, falling apart. It's pretty obvious to me that that's the essential point of all this.
I would agree. It's the ultimate postmodernist destruction. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you used the word, but postmodern attitudes, critical theoretical attitudes, all the sub theories of critical theory are all part and parcel of it. But they're symptoms. The disease is this other thing. This burgeoning reward to be ignorant in the heart of man. The way you're rewarded for being stupid.
Right. But that's ironic that you use the word for rewarded, because in the end I think we all lose.
Yes, yeah. That's the saddest irony of the elitists who are imposing this is, okay, say you're a Bill Gates, and you're pushing for the things you're pushing for.
Right.
And without getting conspiratorial, let's just assume it's a deindustrialized society for addressing the challenges of climate change. Let's just say that, right?
Sure.
Okay, well, how does Bill Gates' great-grandchildren benefit from growing up in a deindustrialized Seattle? I mean, let's take liberal logic of its current form to the nth degree, okay?
Yeah.
So we eliminate the combustion engine. We eliminate the motor car. We eliminate, these polluting evil things.
Right.
Well, what next? Are we going to take out freeways? I watch PBS from time to time, mostly because it's a thought experiment to see what kind of nuttiness is coming down the pike. And there's an episode of a show. Hold on 1 second. Let me just delete that. And they were talking about the neighborhoods of Boyle Heights, and which is slightly east of downtown LA, near an area in which about 5 or 6 freeways come together. Look how good I am at this. The 5, the 101, the 10, the 60, and the, I can't remember, but a bunch of them. Okay?
That's still pretty good.
I thought I could remember all of them, but I can't. I'm like Joe Biden, I'm slowly losing it. And they're talking about how, look at this neighborhood. It used to be that person could, it was all Hispanic accents because it's a Hispanic neighborhood. Look at I want to visit my neighbor over there, and they're just 100 yards in a straight line. But there's an 8-lane freeway between me and them, so I have to go here and there, Essentially, I have to go 3 miles out of my way to go 100 yards, right?
Sure.
Well, tough, what, Buttercup? That's what freeways do. Don't we make decisions for the good of the many at the cost of the few all the time on things like that?
Yeah.
And that's why, let's just say, in Boyle Heights, housing is, I'll use their word, affordable.
Right.
Because Beverly Hills doesn't have 6 freeways coming into one place, right?
Right.
But I can read the writing on the wall with this. And what they're essentially advocating is the removal of the freeway. Right?
Right.
So Consuela can go visit Maria in a straight line. Right? Well, what would civilization in Los Angeles be without a freeway? What was civilization in Los Angeles like before they built the 5 freeway?
Right.
How much good has come from, despite the traffic jams and the pollution.
Sure.
I mean, it all outweighs, right?
Right.
That I can go from here to there.
Cost versus reward, yeah.
Yeah, and how much blood, sweat, tears, treasure did we spend as Los Angelinos, LA County residents, California residents, and Americans to build such an edifice? And what an amazing thing. I mean, how much in America was built in the designed in the 40s, built and completed in the 50s, and we're still using it today, right?
Yeah.
If anything, the argument should be, how about more freeways?
Right.
Let's get more people moving more efficiently over greater periods of time, because nothing causes climate change emitting gas like sitting on a freeway not moving with the car idling. It's better to be having the car move than not, right?
Sure.
But you can see it's a postmodern attitude. Here's modernism, here's what comes after modernism, and postmodernism isn't advanced modernism, it's primitivism reappearing in the wake of the destruction of the modern. So what is Bill Gates' great-grandchildren going to live in? A world with no freeways, with no transportation, with no modern medicine? Are they just going to have one of the few unwarped working acoustic guitars, and they're going to build a little non-polluting campfire and sing Kumbaya around a loincloth-clad people, making sure to engage in sexual copulation that doesn't result in polluting pregnancies? What exactly is the end game that a billionaire genius like Gates has in mind for us? One quick second. Let me just, I thought I had gotten rid of those. Okay. There you go. So, it's a completely misguided thing,
Yeah.
We're asking the wrong people the wrong questions and putting them on TV to blast this message into the minds of the ignorant, who then don't know how to say, well, who is that guy? What's his expertise? Oh, office software? So why is he talking about futurism? He stole spreadsheet software from another guy and sold it through licensing agreements to become real rich.
Yep.
But his software sucks.
Yep.
So why should I think anything else he does doesn't suck?
Right. I keep saying, sit down, Bill. You couldn't figure out how to get computers not to catch viruses, but you're going to tell human beings how not to catch viruses. Yeah.
Yes. That's precisely it.
Doesn't make a whole lot of sense, no.
Yeah.
So I'm curious about, I always see California as kind of like the testing ground for the most radical left ideas, typically, and I'm curious why that is. Do you have thoughts on why?
Because California is the freest place on planet Earth. It is it's the end of the West. Meaning, it almost sounds like the romance of a Jim Morrison song about the Western dream, but it's true. Yeah. If you're Western civilization, and we're going from Mesopotamia to the West, not counting Hawaii, but if you're crossing continents, the very farthest place west is essentially San Francisco.
Yeah.
And for so long, that was the absolute bastion of freedom. So if you were embroiled in the forces of tyranny, why wouldn't you attack there? It's something I tell conservatives all the time. I tell them, reality aside, because we all have to, look out for number one. If you're going to make change in California. Fight on their turf, right? Because that's what they did to win. They fought on our turf. Yeah. They fought in the most advanced city of the future places, San Francisco and Los Angeles, that they could find.
Yeah.
And they conquered and won. These places were conservative until they convinced conservatives through several factors to abandon the dream and move away.
Yeah. Wow, that's so true.
So why California? Because it's good. It's like asking a murderer, why did you kill a beautiful little girl like a John Benet Ramsey or something?
Right.
There's a line in Fight Club that summarizes this perfectly. After the main character bashes the face in of a very good-looking person, he says, why did you do that? He says, because I felt like destroying something beautiful. Right? And that's the core philosophy, the basic programming of evil. Yeah. To destroy something good and beautiful.
Yeah.
And if there is no more place that's more good or beautiful in its natural state than California.
Yeah, that's so true. It's a beautiful, beautiful state.
Yeah, you just come here and you feel the freedom ringing throughout the land in the natural state, not counting the government, the teachers union, the bureaucracies, the crazy neighbors. In its natural state, go to Big Sur and look out over the cliffs of the Pacific and feel the liberty free, flow through your heart. Right. Okay, that's the natural state of California, and that's why they had to attack it.
Yeah, wow, that's so profound and so sad. So you're obviously really passionate about conservative values, liberty, freedom, individualism. Is that were you always that way?
I believe so. Like a lot of people, I've gone through my misguided moments, not thinking clearly about things because in younger states, and I look at myself even today, I'm an ignorant, imperfect, from the Christian sense,
you mean
a sinner. Yeah, I'm human. As much as I like to think of myself as a, God's gift, I'm not, right? So what you hear this criticism of people all the time, which is the consistency test. And it's very easy to use on liberals. For instance, using it on them. I don't even like the word liberal. I usually use the word wrongist because they believe in wrongism.
Right, you're right, they're wrong.
Yeah, we're right. We're not right wing. We're just right. And they're not left. They're wrong.
Right.
Because I don't know what left is. That means nothing.
And I don't like saying that they're lefties because I'm a left-handed person. So
yeah, it means it's. I don't like terms that make meaning that are distracting or destroy meaning or are unclear. I like clear words.
And I think that the communist socialists tend to do that. They usurp language and they twist it so that it doesn't have meaning anymore.
Yes, and an example of this consistency litmus test kind of thing would be like this. Why are you telling me to wear a mask, or why I have to stay home, or why I have to take a vaccine? I thought my body, my choice was core programming. Right?
Yeah.
We were the ones not making the argument, countervailing my body, my choice, saying, no, you don't have a choice to your body. Our saying, being against abortion, was that, wait a minute, there's another person's body that's being affected by this too.
Right.
And you're not giving them a choice.
Right.
And plus there were other choices. Contraception, saying no, blah, 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 blah. And then they bring up the rape issue. And on a podcast episode a few weeks back, I said, the rape issue regarding the abortion issue is so infinitesimally rare as to be not even worthy of discussion.
Right.
It's one of those, we can cross that bridge when we come to it in those rare circumstances.
And they do this all the time. When you have an argument, they go to that 0.00.3% of possibility, and then they make that the focal point of the argument. I mean, that's essentially what the whole trans argument is, right?
That's right.
What percentage of the population are trans?
1 in 35,000 people.
Right, but we're supposed to make... We're supposed to reorient our entire world and language and our whole entire perception around them.
Well, let's divert over there for 1 second, because I think this is interesting. Remember how a few minutes ago I said, look how I can see that the next thing is to remove the freeways, right? Well, what's the point of the trans movement? It's one thing, is I'm a real bottom line guy.
Yeah.
It's literally to remove the bathroom. It's an assault on, I'm serious, it's an assault on climate-altering indoor plumbing, right? Right?
Oh my gosh.
I was at a golf course, and I had to tinkle. So I walked over to a tree and peed on it, and suddenly enlightenment struck me, and I went, my God, I just discovered the perfect transgender bathroom. We will go to singularity. Because singularity is at 1, singularity, I know it's sort of a misnomer, is 0, right? So we'll go from 2 bathrooms to 3 to 1 to none. Right?
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Okay, and that is essentially the year 0, remaking and destroying all history, all memory, all art, all culture, cultural revolutionary end game of destroying everything, right?
Yeah.
That's what cultural warfare, postmodernism, critical theory all goes to, the absolute destruction of everything.
Yeah.
So why not destroy the bathroom? This thing
the evil bathroom.
Right, this thing that provides, cleanliness, doesn't spread disease, removes our waste, with trade-offs, that crap goes somewhere, okay? But, like for instance, I was in the Hollywood Bowl, or at the Hollywood Bowl for a concert. And very similar to that tree on the golf course. I just love using this term, so I use it over and over because it's so perfect for our age, because it's so not masculine. I had to again tinkle. Okay, so I go to the little tinkle room for the men, and I'm standing at a urinal and I'm peeing, and I was like, oh my God, there's some reading material. I thought I could only read while defecating, but now I can read while tinkling. And the thing says, by tinkling in this urinal, you are saving X number of gallons of water per eon, right? Right. And then I was thinking, okay, there's something wrong with this, but I don't know what it is. So I'm watching the rest of the concert, and somehow, because this is true about classical music, I don't know if it was the Mozart, the Beethoven, the Tchaikovsky, but something in the great works of Western civilization suddenly struck me with the thunderbolt of knowledge. And I realized that, Courtney.
It does affect your brainwave.
Right.
Yeah.
And I realized that sign was complete bullcrap. Okay? Do you know why? And this is the Western civilization brilliant deductive reasoning enlightened by classical music at work, okay?
Okay.
This is why you do it.
I'm waiting.
Okay? I realized that they aren't saving even a drop of water by having me piss there versus at home. Because had I not gone to that concert, there's a good chance I would have had to tinkle that night anyway. I just would have done it somewhere else.
Obviously.
Yeah, exactly. Obviously. Right? So they didn't save a drop of water, even though the little plaque of reading material while you're tinkling said you did.
Right.
Okay? Every person who attended that concert that night, had they not, would have peed somewhere else.
Of course.
Maybe on a tree, maybe on a sidewalk, maybe in a toilet. It doesn't really matter, right?
No.
But they would have peed somewhere.
Yeah.
So they didn't save a drop of water.
If not, they might be very dehydrated.
Yeah.
That might be another conversation.
Right,
but
different conversation.
Yeah.
But this whole idea that if I put my human waste here, put it in this receptacle, you'll save garbage. Pee here, you'll save water. Defecate there, you'll save this. Abort your baby here, you'll save that. It's all nonsense, because the action that is polluting, the polluting trade-off of human existence would have happened somewhere.
Right.
Right?
Of course.
Sorry, I went on that jag. I forgot the main point of the question you asked, but
no, that's okay. I'm trying to remember that as well.
It'll come to you.
Yeah. So yes, that is just this is the litmus test for. For wrongists.
Right, for wrongists.
Yeah.
So, the litmus test of their past. This was the point. The reason I don't necessarily hold past beliefs against them, unless it's something completely non-linear in the logic, like my body, my choice for this, but not that, is because at the Hollywood Bowl that day, in the ascension of the information curve that we all go through, where I'll know more tomorrow than I do today, and I'll know more the next day than I do today, we're allowed to have wrong beliefs at a certain point in our life here as a snapshot of time, provided that the next day we try to build on it.
Yes.
Right? The big difference between a wrongist and us, I think, is that we're trying to find new information and be additive in our reasoning to the information we already possess. They seem to want to constantly, cut down and truncate what they believe. So I believe this one day, and Orwell puts it in perfectly in the book 1984. We've reduced the number of words in the dictionary. Yeah. Right? Thus, we've reduced those problematic thoughts you're having by this match. We've shrunken the footprint of your informational overload potential by that much, and we've made your life that much easier.
Right.
Right? So we're gone from, I have an Apple Watch here that reminds me 2 or 3 times a day to breathe, right? It does.
Yeah.
But then I'm told, wear a mask, which prevents breathing. Well, what is it? I go to a yoga class, a very liberal place. I'm told, don't hold your breath, breathe while you're in pose. Mm-hmm. But now I'm told, wear a mask that eliminates breathing. Well, I thought breathing mattered.
Right.
Black Lives Matter, fetuses matter, freedom matters, breathing matters. But now breathing doesn't matter.
Yeah. No. Hypoxia has become perfectly normal, and you become desensitized to it.
That's right.
Because we're adaptive beings.
Yeah. And then the ugly, cloistered, masked person then treats the unmasked, free-breathing person with resentment and hatred. And,
do they ever? I almost never wear a mask, and it causes tremendous issues for me. I'm visually impaired. I'm hearing impaired. So when other people are wearing masks, I depend largely on reading lips. I learned how to speak by reading lips. I got hearing aids when I was 6 years old, so that's how I learned how to speak. So I still very subconsciously, even though I wear hearing aids, depend a lot on it. And then obviously if they're wearing masks, I can't read their lips. I really struggle with hearing them. And then it blocks my vision because I see out of one eye, so I have about 60% of the peripheral vision that somebody who sees bilaterally would have. And also with the mask, the light's reflecting, so it's further distorting my already limited depth perception, because I don't actually have depth perception. I can only, intellectualize depth perception. I don't get motion parallax, because that's not possible to intellectualize and, compensate for. So the masks are a huge issue for me. All this to say that people treat me like, just even walking down the street, I get people cursing at me. I get people, the other day I was in my elevator in my building, and some man started cursing, screaming, started shoving me. At that point, that's when I got very upset. I was like, don't touch me. And here to point out the hypocrisy. You're that terrified of germs, right? My germs, because I'm breathing into the air.
Yeah, you're filthy Courtenay the super spreader. I have to get right up against you and touch you, getting into your space to enforce that you're not wearing a mask, super spreading against me, the masked. And of course the question is, well, what's wrong with his mask if it's not protecting him?
Right.
Yeah. And isn't it interesting? If you had
one surefire way to get my germs is to touch me.
Yeah, that's the way, yes. Yeah. And isn't it interesting? If you how dictate overrides law. So there is something that's an actual law, the American with Disabilities Act.
Yes.
Okay, he is oppressing you, but it's actual law. Okay, yeah. That's why buildings have ramps, for instance. And there have been people put out of business for not accommodating the differently abled. I'm specifically using their politically correct terminology in this case for a reason, right? Actual law. But now a dictate, an opinion, issued by a governor and mayor in dubious circumstances and a bureaucrat in dubious circumstances that has no bearing of law and is unenforceable, and the police have said, we're not even going to enforce this because we have enough problems. God bless them.
Yeah.
Suddenly predominates over Americans with Disabilities Act. And you're a person, what you just described, is classic disability. My wife has asthma. She has problems wearing a mask. I like to breathe. I have a problem wearing a mask. Okay?
Yeah.
But here's where it gets really interesting, okay? Human behavior. If that person had gone up to someone in a wheelchair and screamed at them to walk, and it was captured on video, there are some uses for cancel culture, and that would be one of them.
Yeah.
A person who does, it's like someone who's caught on video beating a dog, okay? We would rightly have that person fired and committed to a mental illness facility or even prosecuted, because what they did is both immoral, illegal, and flat out evil. And only someone really psychotic would do that, right?
Of course.
Imagine going up to someone with Down syndrome and screaming at them what a retard they are, right? It completely inappropriate, awful. Again, that's why we have the tool of cancel culture. For some, I hate the term, but that was, it used to be, we used to call that consequences for your behavior, right? But here's this person essentially doing the exact same behavior as that to you, unaware of your condition, right? And when I see a Down syndrome person, I don't always know they have Down syndrome. Sometimes I just think it's a Democrat, right? I don't know, but I don't berate them either way. I don't scream at people for being Democrats unless they talk to me. Then it's then it gets game on. But it's the same thing, right? And suddenly it doesn't matter. Their wonderful compassionate person pose that they did over here now is ancient history, and they're only compassionate towards those who comply with the mask dictate.
Yeah. Well, I think that has a lot to do with this, the virtue signaling. Because, one, they can, get points for their moral superiority. It's a notch on their superiority belt, if you will. Whereas the other, they don't get any perceived, moral superiority. If they don't know that I have any condition, then I'm just somebody who's violating this mandate that makes them feel morally superior. Most people who are wearing the mask, there's some people who are truly terrified. If they're that scared, they should stay home, I personally think. But there are a lot of people who do it because they feel like they're doing good. They're told that they're protecting others, they're being a good Samaritan. And so, with someone like me, they're just shaming me. They don't know, and they don't have anything to be gained by it.
Yeah, and isn't it interesting how it doesn't go the other way? I look at people who wear the mask on the street, especially when they're around nobody. I sneer at them with contempt. But I don't reveal any of that to them. Why? Because in America, I believe in liberty. And I believe you are free to make dumb choices if you want to make them.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's why I generally, in fact, I never go to abortion clinics and scream at anyone there. Because as much as I despise someone getting an abortion, I'm doing it not from, I'm not doing it. Right? But if you want to do it and it's legal in your jurisdiction, you're doing it those ways, first of all, there's nothing I can do about it, because it's your choice. Second of all, it's your choice. I'd rather you don't, but fine. Same attitude towards cigarette smoking. I don't like it near me, but I love your right to do it. I don't like weed, but I like your right to do it. If you choose to do it in a way that doesn't affect me, fine. But like if you wear a mask, it's your choice to look like an idiot. And then there are the people who truly believe they need it. People with comorbidities or something. And with people out there who have different issues, I'm not going to presuppose they don't have it when they might. And I agree on erring, as long as you don't force me to do something, I'm okay with you erring on the side of caution, even if it looks a little stupid, fine. I mean, the one that gets me are the people who are jogging in them. Don't even get us started on that. But the point is, it's like you're not near anyone and you're jogging, okay.
Or they're hiking on a mountain by themselves.
Or on a golf course. I think you're an idiot, but I'm not going to say anything to you because it's your right to be an idiot. It is. But the second you engage me, I teach people through behavior to never do that again, or if they do, they have to think twice about it. Yeah. I mean, I assume we have language constraints on this podcast that I prefer to follow. Even if you didn't, I prefer to follow it. But the stream of unmitigated profanity that comes out of me at full volume when one of the mask holes says something obnoxious to me, either when I'm alone with my wife or especially with my children, is, let's just say, it's epically gorgeous. It's beautiful.
That gets me, is because I feel like it's child abuse when they put the mask on the children.
Yeah, or what I'm referring to is people telling me in front of my kids that my kids are going to die because we're not wearing masks.
Sure. That's also child abuse.
That's child abuse. It's not your damn business how what I do with my kids. As long as I'm not raping them in front of you, it's none of your damn business.
No. Absolutely. I think that's so interesting that you said, you don't go and shame them. And I think I see kind of a lot of that. Typically on the left there's constant shaming, and there's constant pressure for, if you're not doing it this way, if you don't post a black box on Blackout Tuesday, if you don't wear a mask, all of the shaming for whatever virtue signaling you didn't subscribe to. But I don't see so much of it on the other side, and I think a lot of it is what you are alluding to. It's because it's live and let live. People should be individuals. You have the right to make the choice that you want to make. But I think where I take issue is when the, for lack of a better word, just the propaganda machines are spewing so much misinformation that instills so much fear, so people are not equipped to make good choices. And then they think they're making a wise choice, but they're not following any kind of logic to support that choice.
Yeah, but that also goes to a personal choice issue, which is, we have to take we hear that from liberals all the time. Take responsibility for the information you get. Read the label on the product, right? One of my great pet peeves is a belief that media should come with warning labels, right? Media. So if cigarette boxes have warning labels, if almost every product has a cancer-containing chemical product warning label, this product may contain something that can make you sick at some point in your life if you ever use it, right?
Right.
Warning, this product was manufactured in a place that may have had a peanut, right? We have warning labels all over the place. Why isn't media equipped with a warning label? Especially with music. I grew up in the 80s when Al and Tipper Gore advocated for warning labels on certain music albums that may contain explicit lyrics. Right?
Right, yeah.
I didn't like it because I said at the time, well, you know what's going to happen, or Ari, the kids are only going to buy the albums that have the warning labels.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
And now they do. And look how music is even more vile.
Of course.
Right? With baby, 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 pump you, bump you, bend you,
Yeah.
twerk you, right? And, Papa Cap in this, Papa the boner in that, all over the place, right?
Sure.
It turned out to be a total backfire.
Yeah.
So the left is fine warning label things, right?
Right.
But media should contain warning labels. Warning, this is CNN. It may contain far less news per minute than you might expect. Right?
That would be great.
Warning, NFL. This may contain much less football than we're actually presenting here. For a 3-hour broadcast, it only contains 11 minutes of actual football, right? And that football resembles in no way whatsoever the football of 30 years ago. In a way that's bad, okay?
Right.
If you're expecting masculine, hard-hitting, good, cool football, you're not going to see it even when they're actually playing the football, right? But isn't it interesting? Every corporation is evil, except media corporations. We can trust those, according to the liberal, right? But to that point, I remember years ago, again, PBS broadcasting, they'd have these roundtable discussions with the newsmakers of the day, Ted Koppel, Peter Jennings, Bernard Shaw, Judy Woodruff, New York Times, writer Tom Friedman. Yeah, we really need to take responsibility for where we get our information and make sure we check our sources, right? So, in a way, in the marketplace, you as the consumer, liberal consumer, should have listened to that and taken into account the quality of the product, and you should rise above your own philosophical biases and compare that product to another product and see which one actually contains more information, right?
Well, that would be a marketplace of ideas.
That whole...
Sorry.
But that's an example of that as a problem. They simply don't. And when they don't, the marketplace of ideas gets more and more all shallow and devoid of ever less information, Something I say on my podcast, because people will ask, well, Hari, how would you advise us to compare news to news? Because that can actually be kind of difficult. And I agree, because all news presented in television, written, or audio form, or computer-based, which can be sort of a combination of them all, has different, let's just say, lost in translation problems with how the information is uptaken, right? So I actually propose doing something slightly different. I say, don't judge the news by the news, judge the source of the news by the commentaries written about it. People will then say, well, what the hell does that mean? Because you're conservative. I say, go to the opinion writers on the wrong and the right side. Notice I didn't say left and right, I said the wrong and the right side. And some of those on the wrong side are pretty good writers.
Sure.
And compare the quality and the density of commentary on that side of things, written commentary usually, and compare the level of thinking. So, on the left, take the New York Times standard people, Paul Krugman, Frank Bruni, Nicholas Kristof, Tom Friedman, Maureen Dowd. Those are the 5 big ones at the New York Times.
Right.
And they're all idiots, okay? And I'm saying that as a statement of fact. That's not opinion, they're idiots.
Yep.
Just read their stuff, they're idiots.
Yep.
Especially Paul Krugman.
Yes.
But there are a few good ones on the wrong side.
Yeah.
Matt Taibbi of Rolling Stone, Christopher Hitchens,
Yeah.
who's deceased now, but read his writing.
Yes.
Read Glenn Greenwald and Andrew Sullivan, okay? But especially Greenwald and Sullivan in the modern era. You'll at least read some quality thinking, even if the conclusions are wrong. But look how few writers on the wrongest side, are like Taibbi, Greenwald, and Sullivan. Meanwhile, look at our side. Dennis Prager, Larry Elder, David Solway, David Goldman, Michael Walsh, Niall Ferguson, Tom Sowell, Victor Davis Hanson, Walter Williams, Scott Adams. I could go on literally for 45 minutes. Kurt Schlichter, I could go on and on and on for 45 minutes doing nothing but listing thinkers, listing their names.
Yes.
And the amount of quality material they turn out as commentaries about the news is endless.
Yeah.
On any given day, all you have to do is Google one of those names and check latest news, and their new column will appear, and it'll be Brilliance by Victor Davis Hanson, Brilliance by Dr. Tom Sowell, Brilliance by Shelby Steele. There's another name. I mean, one after another. And when you see just how deep that team of thinkers are, you say to yourself, there's something going on here. There's a reason thinking that way results in that many great thinkers, and there's a reason thinking the other way results in so few. I can only think of 3 or 4.
Right.
And then you go, aha. So when I then look at news and how it's reported to me with, let's not say bias, but the lens that it puts on the information, I then know that a Citizens Free Press, a Gateway Pundit, a Breitbart, a Weasel Zippers, a PJ Media is going to have higher quality sourced information and put a lens on stories that are more relevant to this day and age than the New York Times, the LA Times, NBC, CBS, ABC, CNN, on and on and on.
Yeah.
And so
I'm curious. I have some thoughts on this. What are your thoughts on why that is? Like, what creates that kind of thinking?
Being right. Being right. That's right. We're right about most things.
Yeah.
We clearly, you said it earlier, non-biased math. 2 + 2 = 4. 2 + 2 does not equal racist.
No.
Right? 2 + 2 doesn't equal sexist. 2 + 2 doesn't equal privilege. 2 + 2 doesn't equal my vagina. Right? It equals 4. It's a clarity of thought issue. Yeah. There are 2 genders, men or women. With men, some of them have their dingles removed and they become eunuchs, which is a form of feminization. They can also drink soy-based products, eat a lot of French fries and cheese, or are raised by feminists themselves and then they lose their sexual function. Okay, but they are male.
Yep.
Females can have the same analogous alterations. Sure. They can either look like Melania Trump or they can look like Rashida Tlaib. Right? And one is a sexy, beautiful female that attracts the male eye and other things, and the other doesn't.
Right.
And we can conclusively say that one that doesn't, it doesn't. Right. And it's not biased to say Rashida Tlaib is ugly. Anyone, if you showed her picture to any 5-year-old child, and you showed her the picture of Melania Trump and said, which one's pretty, which one's ugly, every 5-year-old child would point to Melania and say pretty, and Rashida and say ugly. It is absolutely obvious. Yeah. And the conservative side, the right-thinking side, is willing to state the obvious and not go through linguistic and mental gymnastics to try to come up with some strange justification for holding the bizarre ideas they hold.
Right. I think there's also an element of, when you're talking about the thinkers on the right that you talked about are just such deep, profound minds. And I think that one of the biggest distinctions that I see is the critical thinking aspect. And I think that that's something that has been so lost in our education, And I think as a result of our media and our entertainment, a lot of the institutions that have been infiltrated, in our society. But the biggest danger of that infiltration, I think, is the loss of critical thinking.
Yeah, that's definitely, and the higher value that's predominated that results in that is this idea that I'm not allowed to offend, right?
Right.
If I'm not allowed to offend, then I'm not allowed to think, and I'm not allowed to communicate. Because invariably, someone is going to be a winner in my evaluation, and someone is going to be a loser. And the loser will be offended. So if you're fat, slovenly, ugly, useless, lazy, and I call you that, you will feel bad and thus be offended.
Right.
But if I'm not able to call you that, how will you know and how will others know that you are those things and that there is room for improvement in life?
Right.
You can work out, you can buy skincare products, you can change your diet, you can gain knowledge, you can read a book, you can turn off the TV, on and on and on. Right?
So this is what you're saying, like if you can't point out the obvious, then it impedes your ability to think at all.
Yes.
And it confuses you.
Yeah. And then corporations that used to have the attitude of, I'm making a product or providing a service for my customer base. Mm-hmm. And we care what our customer base thinks, and we care to expand our customer base where we can. But we don't want to expand our customer base here and lose our customer base there. Now companies act in their communications departments in ways that essentially say, we care about our customers, but we don't want to offend these people over here. Mm-hmm. Sir, what if those people don't use your product? Yeah, but they're on Twitter, and they could say something mean about me.
Yeah.
Right?
Mean tweets. We know.
Right. A perfect example is MyPillow, right? MyPillow's Mike Lindell cares about the people who either buy or want to buy a MyPillow. He doesn't care about those who don't.
Right.
And that's the way that's how you're supposed to operate.
Yes.
But look how the Coca-Cola Corporation doesn't care about that. Right? I don't drink a lot of Coke. I just don't. Yeah. But you know what? I love Coke. I keep it around the house in case someone wants it. I'm a Coca-Cola customer. But the Coca-Cola Corporation, by catering to the philosophies of Black Lives Matter, doesn't give one flying you-know-what about making me less incentivized to buy future Cokes.
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting? They should be obsessed with selling me Cokes. After all, I bought Cokes.
Right. So you could be a repeat customer.
I could be a repeat customer. Yes. That's the way capitalism is supposed to work. But now it doesn't. And people then point and go, and by the way, there's an interesting thing. If capitalism isn't functioning, is it capitalism? Actually, I don't like the word capitalism. If free enterprise economics is not functioning, is it free enterprise economics? And the answer is no. And if it's not, then what is it? Well, it has to be some version of its counterpart, which is socialism, communism, Marxism.
Right.
So you've devolved the Coca-Cola Free Enterprise Corporation into a quasi-crony socialist organization that's now marketing its brand to non-purchasers of its product.
Right.
It's very interesting, yeah. And well, this gets into a very dangerous area because in America, socialism does not come from our government. Socialism is imposed on the street by your fellow citizens screaming at you about a mask, being the brown shirts in your example, in your apartment building's elevator, right? It's enforced by the corporation saying at Cuckold Coffee, no, I'm not going to give you the beverage you bought unless you put the face diaper on.
Right.
Right?
Yep.
It's enforced by the Coca-Cola Corporation saying, I don't even care if you bought the product anymore. Coke is no longer the American way. Coke is no longer it. Coke is no longer the real thing. Now Coke is the drink of Black Lives Matter. Right?
Yeah.
So, as you can see, it's enforced through the institutions, not through the electoral person. And it didn't matter that Trump was president for 4 years. Socialism was creeping through these other institutional entities, from the guy on the street next to you, to the screaming heritage protester with a pussy hat on, to the college campus, radical who is shouting down you or I as speaker, or attendees to a speaker, to any other area of life.
Right.
And that's why I talked about, as your point earlier, about finding that little square for the video people, that square that you control and expanding it. Because the socialism that affects you is when someone else comes into your life and tries to shrink that circle of liberty you control.
Right.
Saying, wear a mask, take a vaccine, don't go here, don't go there, stay in your circle.
Absolutely. So you talked about Trump and the socialism creeping in anyway, and now we have Biden who's writing, I don't know, what are we at, 53, 50-something executive orders. What do you see over the next few years happening?
Oh, well, I think something magnificent has happened in America. Conservatives constantly talk about the concept from the movie The Matrix of being red-pilled or red-pilling others.
Yeah.
And what happened on November 3rd was the ultimate red-pilling, but it happened in a way we could not predict. Some of us, like me, had suspicions, but we're empirical people and we go to the evidence, and until you have proof, you're not absolutely sure. But the great red-pilling to me was the realization that elections are completely rigged. And I don't mean a little rigged. I mean completely rigged. And it's not November 3rd that was the problem. The red-pilling thing for me is that now that and this is the miracle of Trump, now that we know how they do it, we can go, now I get it. Say California, for instance. California is not a blue state.
No.
California has had, because I know that my fellow citizens hate the blight, the homelessness, the crime, the corruption, the hypocrisy as much as I do.
Of course.
What we've had is 20 years or more of completely rigged elections. Now, we also have a rigged political system, an insider's game, and lobbyist control, and corporatism, and all that stuff. But let's leave that aside. What we have now are knowable rigged elections.
Yeah.
And Trump won, I believe, is a miracle from God. But the real miracle from God is in his, in finger quotes, loss. We've now realized this is how they do it.
Yeah.
And because they were so desperate to get rid of Trump, they were willing to lose the one advantage electorally they had, which was keeping a lid on the secrets of the methods of their election theft.
Yep.
And so what I see happening over the next, let's just say 20 years, is a absolute grassroots movement, a one agonizing step-by-step process that will be slow and frustratingly slow, but slow is good because slow is thorough.
And that's what they did.
Right, in which we, through fixing the elections, by fixing the party politics, by addressing long-standing systemic issues that we had no idea how to address, but Trump kind of showed us, that we'll be able to do our own reverse long march through the institutions. And it might take 30, 40, 50 years, but I see a day around maybe it will be around my 100th birthday of, 2060, 2070, I don't care how long it takes, as long as it happens, in which we take back the NFL, we take back the country clubs, we take back the libraries, the universities, these edifices that are also sure to collapse onto themselves because of the flimsiness of their ideologies. Now we know also to march through them and take them back for what they're worth.
Amen.
And that's where I really say, I don't know how long it'll take. A lot of times these things happen faster than you think. And with the good news is, with the age of the average high-powered Democrat being well above 75,
right.
Pelosi, Schumer, Biden, etc. Even Kamala Harris is an old lady. Yeah. I know it's hard for us to believe because she's sold as a 20-something sex symbol whore on the cover of Vogue with tennis shoes. She's old. Okay? So even that is not youthful. And then where they do have youth, Ilhan Omar, AOC, or whatever, have you ever seen stupider people? I'll tell you, if my enemy is stupid, I'll take that any day of the week.
Sure.
I'm a football fan, and a football coach I respect said this. He said, I used to draft talent, but you know what I draft now? I draft smart. I learned no matter how talented the player is, if I draft stupid, we're going to lose. Wow. And the good thing the Democrat wrongist party structure has is it has these youthful people, but they're all really stupid. And you look at our youthful people, Candace Owens, Charlie Kirk, the Turning Point USA people, Alex Clark, Isabel Brown, the luminaries, especially out of Turning Point.
Brilliant.
Are all brilliant people, and they're all in their 20s.
Yeah, they're brilliant.
So if I'm going to compare my future against yours, I'm going to compare my youth
against... pun intended.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, and also look who the Democrat candidates for president on the horizon are. Beto O'Rourke, dumb as a rock.
Yeah.
Seriously, us, Candace Owens. You put Candace Owens and Beto O'Rourke side by side in a debate. I mean, I don't care what kind of bias moderator you have. O'Rourke will be run over like a skunk in the middle of the road. It'll be beautiful.
Yeah.
So, from the electoral standpoint, from the cultural standpoint, from just the base granular building block of society for power politics standpoint, I see so many good things happening on our side. And I'll tell you, if Biden was, if you will, the great white hope of the Democrat Party needed to take down Trump, boy, I wouldn't want to be cursed with that guy as the leader of my party right now.
Right.
Seriously, him? And for Kamala Harris, who's probably got the most obnoxious personality in politics these days, bring it on.
Right.
Every day. I don't care what they do. Bring it on.
Yeah.
And yeah, they are a threat. They are a danger. What they're going to do is they're going to do damage, of course. But you know what? When we were stuck in the 2008 election, and we had to defend, and even 2012, and we had to defend a legacy of George W. Bush, John McCain, and Mitt Romney, where were we?
Right, yeah, sure.
Okay? Trump has been proven to be right about everything. Even his son is a viable candidate. Actually, all of his sons are, but especially Don Jr.
Even Ivanka is, yeah.
Even Ivanka, his daughters too.
Yeah.
But, Ivanka, Don Jr., Eric, and I mean, that Barron is like 14 years old, and he's really good looking. And imagine him as a 25-year-old. Yeah. Smart as a whip, know.
Yep.
So...
there's definitely promise. I'm curious your thoughts on the geopolitical kind of aspect of things and, our adversaries' influence, if you will, and how that's...
You mean how China owns everything in America? Yeah. Well, it's a very interesting question, actually, but there's a few things to keep in mind. And I'm not Pollyannish in my eternal optimism because I believe things do get worse before they get better in many ways. But... history has shown when you have kleptocratic governments, like say the old Soviet Union or modern China, they tend to collapse under their own weight. And the way they behave usually reveals certain desperate things that they don't let you know about, but you can see in the context clues of their behavior. Right? Yeah. So China is clearly making a move for worldwide power at this moment. But why? Why are they doing to Hong Kong the equivalent of strangling the golden goose?
Yeah.
Right? Well, it's because their leaders are afraid of being overthrown.
Yes.
David Goldman, one of my favorite writers I mentioned on the right, is a China expert. And he makes this point. He said, I love this line. He said, China's Communist Party is communist in name only. They're not communists. They're not at all. No. They're Confucianist imperialists.
Yes.
That are identical in philosophy to the Confucian imperialists of centuries before.
Absolutely.
Who work for one thing and one thing only, which is social cohesion, in which the Emperor of China lives every day in deadly fear that his head can be put on a spike when his people grow weary of him and overthrow him. And when you have 1 billion people in a country, if they decide, like, you ever go up to a beehive and take a stick and hit it and see what happens? Well,
I got stung by 20 bees when I was on a hike and the girl next to me did that.
Okay, Courtney, most people don't do that. Okay?
Yeah.
But the point is...
I didn't.
Yeah, but the point is just watch a Winnie the Pooh cartoon. That's what happens, right? Bees go berserk. Yes. They're happy, they go about their business, but you whack them, they will kill everything around them.
Yes.
And that's the way the Chinese population historically is, and that's how the leaders of China look at their population. So they're constantly trying to appease them with prosperity, the equivalents of bread and circuses. The social controls are done to appease the population of China, not to appease the rulers. It helps the rulers contain the population's information uptake and sort of movement, of course, but it's generally done to soothe the population and keep that beehive calm and just doing its work. Okay, so our enemy, believe it or not, is not China, and certainly not the Chinese people, who again are not the people, especially are not communists.
No.
You know, the Chinese people are historically an ally of America, and it's provable because look how well the Chinese people of Taiwan and Hong Kong, who get to live as actual Chinese, love America.
Oh, yeah.
They know more about America than inner city Utes in America.
Yeah.
Okay, so the problem geopolitically is an international elitist cabal.
Yes.
That crosses national borders. And it's embodied in places like Davos or the European Union or the United Nations. And it's comprised of billionaires and bureaucrats and jerk-offs and sorry. You know, like Fauci and Gates and Soros and Buffett and, you know, any number of tech billionaires and industrialists and royal family descendants and, you know, basically a Star Wars bar cantina freak show of very rich people who think they know better.
Who want the fourth industrial revolution.
Right, or a de-evolution, the deindustrialization.
That is actually what it really is, but that's what they call it.
Right, a Build Back Better, a Great Reset, Agenda 2030, Agenda 21. And you see it manifested in your own cities on the ground in all sorts of ways. And I cover on my own podcast about different issues, so I'm not going to drill down onto it all. Sure. I'm sure you've talked about some of these things before, you know, like from a city planning perspective. But the issue is, geopolitically, is we're living in a very interesting era in which nation states are not the ally or the enemy.
Right.
Some are better and worse, and they're all on spectrums. Okay, and they're also, it depends what bureaucrats and elected officials take control. So, for instance, when Trump is president, and ostensibly a conservative Netanyahu is prime minister of Israel, the two countries are allied.
Right.
If Netanyahu lost power and the Israeli left took power, well, they're as leftist as Barack Obama and Kamala Harris are.
For sure.
So does that mean we're still allies? Well, yes, because the people of America and the people of Israel share Western civilization.
Yeah.
As most Americans, most Australians, most Western or most Europeans, most people who are of Christian descent, etc. And ironically, and this is the good news, most Chinese citizens, most citizens of India, you know, most citizens actually of Muslim countries. I mean, why do you think...
Most people want to be free.
Right,
Yeah.
why do you think in most Muslim countries they drink American soda, wear American fashion, in the case of most of the males of Muslim countries, and I'm sorry, this might sound, you know, somewhat prurient, but it's absolutely true, masturbate to American pornographic material. There's something very American-philic about 90% of the world.
Yeah.
And to me, that's a great sign.
Yeah.
Right? As long as the average Muslim man, and I know this is a family podcast, but it's, I think, a useful point, masturbates to an American woman who's scantily clad, I think we have a very healthy situation in the world.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that's peace and prosperity. You know, uber alles. Okay? But you have this cabal that is inflaming and causing problems, right?
Absolutely.
They go into a country and they infiltrate the culture. They undermine the structures and institutions of a given country.
Yes.
They make one country think they hate another. They profit, many of them in certain industries, from the war industry.
Yeah.
And that's where the problems lie. And I think that requires a more generally subtle understanding of you and me, John Q. citizen, about how to address this, because it's not like we're in the 1950s where we go, well, the Soviet Union is expansionist and communism is our enemy.
Right.
While that is true,
Sure.
the expansionism, communism is now on our college campuses
Yep.
and in our media.
Absolutely.
It's in a different place. So we can't win it in a Cold War with a nuclear buildup. It has to be at the atomic level, not nuclear atoms, but
atomized,
at the granular level of, I need to raise my children inoculated against indoctrination. And they need to talk to their friends and make their friends understand that commies ain't cool.
Yes.
That's how you do it.
Yeah.
And this is great. I'd much rather fight a Cold War against communism by talking to my children
Yeah.
than sending troops into a proxy fight in like Vietnam or Korea
Of course.
and have nuclear weapons pointed at each other. That's
Without doubt.
that's a
An
very good thing.
ideological, a true philosophical war is a much more powerful and much less dangerous.
Yes.
Much less people have to die.
Yeah, and history has shown, for instance, that the people who are adherent to the Old and New Testaments of the Bible generally last longer than those who aren't.
Of course.
That's the historical sweep. Why do you think Western civilization is so amazing and is everywhere?
Yeah.
You know, again, Western civilization is so completely dominant that Muslims who hate the West in Muslim countries masturbate to American adult material.
Right.
Fabulous. Okay?
Says it all.
It says it all.
So you bring up, so funny. You bring up the Judeo-Christian, values and morals that this country, the Western civilization, is predicated upon. I think part of the problem we're seeing is demoralization. I very much see what's happening as a spiritual war. I know that's a bit of an oversimplification, and it's a bit, it's spiritual, obviously, but I'm curious your thoughts on that.
That's exactly what it is. Okay. Because the more debased from faith a person can be, the easier they are to control, and the easier they are to imprison. Something I tell my friends, and I say this jokingly, but actually dead serious too, which is this. It didn't matter what they did to the Soviet prisoner in the gulags. If you laughed at your torturer, if you still had a smile on your face, you won. They can't handle that. Yeah. My God, I tortured them and they laughed. I still haven't broken their spirit. But it's funny. I'm to my friends in my circle, I'm in many ways the spiritual leader. I constantly tell people there's hope when they don't see it. I tell people to be positive when they're not. And I sometimes have my demoralized moments, occasionally, right? I go, how am I going to do this today, right?
You're human, yes.
Right. But I also, this is an interesting mindset. I don't know if it's unique to me or if it's just common sense or whatever. I tell myself, no, F that.
Right.
I am the alpha of this. I am the leader. Not only are they depending on me, I'm depending on me.
Absolutely.
And I want to eat life up and spit it out.
Yes.
Eat it, bite it, chew it, digest it, and, eliminate it in a way that saves a gallon of water. Right? Okay. And so I choose to be not demoralized, but moralized. I choose to be activated. I choose to be the alpha and the leader and the powerful one. Yeah. I choose it. And because I choose it, I then am.
Right.
And so
it's a constant choice.
Yeah, it's a choice.
Yes.
You have to choose. Dennis Prager talks about it. We're obligated to choose to be happy.
Yes.
Right? So I choose it.
Yeah.
I choose not to be defeated. And I think others have to learn the same way we talked earlier about we have to stop waiting for the government to give us our freedom back.
Of course.
And just take it.
Yes.
Take it back.
Yes.
The same is true with this. Take your if you're a guy out there, be alpha.
Yes.
Choose to be a leader.
Yes.
Right? Choose to be the one who says, no, I'm charging into battle first. And I'm going to show all you other ones how not to be a pussy. Right?
Yeah.
Choose to show women out there what a real man looks like. Yes. And it's an active personal choice. Right. And it takes some work, but what I realize every day when I go from and I don't very often, it's a very rare thing for me, but when I go from those demoralized moments, I say, oh, screw that, I'm this.
Yeah.
I realize it's, it takes a certain amount of work and circumspect observation, and we get into sort of an interesting, more overarching area of life that I think is worth mentioning in this, which is, well, what is life and what is death, right? Yeah. Okay, well, life by definition is acquisition. As I'm alive, I'm going to acquire stuff, knowledge, love, learn and share, like we're doing right now. Yeah. All this stuff. Yeah. What is death? Death is two things. It is, and these are separate things, but when they're said together, they sound like one thing. Death is inevitable loss. It's something that is inevitable. The only thing we don't know is when or how. But the how someone doesn't matter, because the when of simply the machinery of flesh and bone just eventually will give out sooner or later. The cells eventually just can't last forever.
Right.
No matter what Bill Gates tells me to inject, right? And then, so there's an inevitability to it.
Sure.
And then it involves loss.
Yes.
Speaking as a guy, I'm going through these things, and then as a lady, you can think from the analogous standpoint.
Sure.
From a guy, it means you're going to lose your sexual function, your eyesight, your life, your heartbeat, your breathing, your body, your mind, if you're Joe Biden, on and on and on. It involves losing step by step all those things until you lose the life energy force in your body itself, and then you cross over into the dead zone of whatever that is.
Right.
And we hope through our faith that our souls live forever there in God's heavenly kingdom. That's what our faith is, part of the Judeo-Christian philosophies believe. But it might not. We don't know. We're taking this grand gamble on it.
That's inherent in the word faith.
Right. That's the faith. And we live our lives not committing criminal, decadent acts, moment by moment to moment, raping, pillaging, murdering, etc.
Right.
With the faith that there is that.
Yeah.
If there isn't, then we'd all, I should have raped and pillaged more. Silly me. I could have been a pirate and I wasn't. Okay? But still, I wouldn't have been happy as a pirate, so what's bad,
Because you have a conscience.
Yeah, little things like that. I much prefer living in a civilized home, in a civilized place, and I'm really not up for living on a ship. I just don't like, I like the way I like my ocean is over there, and I like it to mind its own business. And I'll look at it when I want to, but I don't want to be on it 24/7, okay?
Motion sickness,
That's everything. It's just gross, okay? I mean, it's just icky. But the broader point is, life ends. It always does in death. It always ends in loss. So, okay, what am I supposed to do? Just lie down on this floor right here and wait? Right? What am I supposed to do? Just give up? Oh my God, Courtney, I have some news for you. I'm going to lit the camera. I'm going to die. So I don't know how I'm ever going to go on. Right? I mean, what kind of horrible...
It's a horrible existence.
But look what a waste that is. God gives me these things, right?
Right.
And what am I going to do? Just throw away all of God's gift because someday the lease on God's gift is up and he takes it back?
Right.
I mean, what an ingracious, disgusting attitude.
That's like saying,
but that's the attitude the wrongists has. Look at those feminist women who have eaten their share of bacon and soy-based products to the point where they're morbidly obese, and then they say, "Don't judge me."
Right.
Right? They've grown up in America and Western civilization, but because of activism, they become Antifa members, or become the screaming Heritage Army on a college campus shouting down Ann Coulter.
Right.
I mean, they've essentially done that.
Yes.
It's part of faith is gratitude. Saying to God, thank you for giving me what you've given me.
Absolutely.
It's been enough. I appreciate it. I like more. Like, for instance, I'd like an Italian sports car to go along with my German sports car. That would be nice. I'd like a 5-acre house to go along with my 1-acre house. I really want a wood-burning pizza oven to go along with my barbecue.
Yeah.
I mean, these sound like great stuff. Yeah. But I don't blame God for not giving me those things.
And those incentivize you to work towards things you want.
Yeah.
Which is a beautiful thing.
That's right. That's a beautiful thing. Yeah. And one of the ways you get what you want is by harboring that alpha attitude as a guy, right? By saying, screw this, I'm getting up, I'm getting dressed, I'm going to work, I'm going to work hard, I'm going to work on my craft.
Right.
And do it. And then be a leader of others, and others will look at you and go, wow, that guy has it all together. And people don't know I don't have it all together. I'm just choosing to have it all together.
Yes.
Right? And so it's kind of like that.
Right.
But so many people look at the inevitability of death and they just want to give up now. And they're in their 20s. This is perfectly embodied in when Ocasio-Cortez Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez tells kids, the world will be on fire in 4 years. Well, what's a teenager supposed to do? They're dealing with angst and acne and hormones, and now the world's going to be gone in 4 years. Why should I even try to overcome angst, acne, and hormones?
Right. Why bother?
Why bother?
Yeah, it's so incredibly demoralizing.
Yeah, that's the core of demoralizing, It's essentially, if you really bottom line it, what is demoralization? It's getting the living to believe they're dead already.
Yes.
It's spiritual death while the husk of your body is still functioning.
Still functioning and still alive.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
It's kind of a deep concept, if you really think of it. Go, wow, that's kind of heavy.
And that is the crux of postmodernism, essentially.
Right.
Yeah.
Nothing matters. It's all over. We've done it all. We've seen it all. We've been everywhere.
Yeah.
A perfect example is I talked on my podcast about this experience. It was actually a year ago. Trump's State of the Union address last year, where he gave Rush Limbaugh the Medal of Freedom, and Pelosi ripped up the speech. My wife and I actually got invited to, she saw a Facebook ad and we responded to it just on a lark, for a Frank Luntz panel. Those panels with the dials that he does? Okay. So we actually got invited on it. Okay. So we're watching the speech and we're getting the dials, and it's on TV and we're being interviewed and everything.
Right.
And so we watched Trump's speech, and then we watched the rebuttal speech. It was given by one Gretchen Adolf Hitler Whitmer of Michigan.
Yeah,
right? We all know who she is now.
Yes.
And Frank, of course, asked us all in the audience what we thought. I said this. I said, here's what strikes me. Trump's speech is a celebration of Western civilization, the great yearnings and ambitions of mankind, the huge vision and possibilities of the future. Because he was talking about sending Americans back to the moon, colonizing the moon, exploring Mars, and the stars beyond.
Yeah.
And when Reagan talked about the vision, he would use lines like, man's great journey from the swamps to the stars.
Yes.
Okay? Gretchen Adolf Hitler Whitmer comes on with her rebuttal speech, and she talks about how her great accomplishment was figuring out how a little boy in Michigan could fill some potholes with dirt.
Wow.
Wow is right. So I said to Luntz, hold on. Just look at this compare and contrast.
Yeah.
Between a grand vision on the possibilities of a future for mankind versus dirt.
Literal.
And look how that tells the people of America as one of their ostensible leaders. All you are, in our opinion, is dirt. Dirt is all you're going to be. Dirt is all you are. And your greatest ambitious goal you can achieve is filling a pothole. And by the way, I then said to Luntz, it's really ironic that a government official who's a Democrat is admitting the lack of efficacy of government programs that it came and fill its own potholes.
Right.
Right. Well done.
Yeah, good job.
Good job, government. But look at this different in contrast in visions, and which one's moralized and which one's demoralized.
Right.
Which one believes that we can be better than we are if we just try and just believe, which was saying, no, you're nothing.
Right.
You're nothing.
It's such a stark.
Right. You're so nothing, we have to take care of you. We're so nothing, we'll take care of you as long as you fill a pothole with some dirt for us. Go dig.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. And that's it. That's the great contrast. That's the thing that our news media and our culture is trying to imbue people with. And that's where it's so tragic. Is God didn't put us. I think of a friend of mine asked me while we were driving through LA, what do you think about it? I say, I'm obsessed with what Los Angeles will be in 5,000 years. Will people in 5,000 years have the freedom of mobility like us? What problems will they still be dealing with? Which problems will they solve?
Right.
How will they live? What will be different about them? Perhaps the freeways can be taken out because we have flying cars. Right?
Yeah, we were supposed to have that.
Right, but who knows, right?
Yeah.
But I think about that, and I'm willing to make sacrifices for generations yet born that I will never know. And it takes me back to a story I heard about the signers of the Declaration, when they signed that as a death warrant during the Revolutionary War.
Right.
Many of them were arrested. Now, get this. They were arrested, and they're put in a cell, and they're tied to a post in a cell, and then on the other side of the bars, their children are brought in by the British troops and tortured in front of them in the most gruesome ways. Okay?
Yeah.
And they're told, this can all be over. Your child will stop screaming if you just renounce the Declaration of Independence. And then just tell the people who you've led into this war against the crown to please lay down their arms, and we will let your children go. But you know what none of them did? None of them broke.
Right.
And they did that for me and my kids, and they didn't even know me. Right. And my ancestors at the time weren't even in America.
Right.
My God, what an act of faith.
Yeah.
My God, what an act of strength. And you know, my wife, who has a different attitude towards our children than I do, says, well, I could never do that. And I said, I'm not a sadist, and I mean no harm to my children in any way, but I could. Because I understand it goes God, country, family in the order.
Yes.
And we make our sacrifices for God first, for our country, and for the collective good of what makes our civilization worthwhile. Because if our civilization falls apart, then no one has liberty. And then finally we stand up for our family. But think about what a sacrifice that was that those men did.
Tremendous.
You know, hearing the screams of their sons and daughters as their kids are being dismembered and mutilated in front of them.
Yeah.
And they still stuck by the words of that declaration.
Yeah, I had seen a video, and they were talking about how our founding fathers had everything. I mean, they really were, very, very privileged, and they took this great risk because for them, liberty meant more. They were willing to lose everything because for the sake of liberty and freedom, and that's what they were fighting for. And to me, it's just so profound, that stark juxtaposition to what we see today, where people are just so cowardly. I think there's so little courage and little willingness to stand up for what they believe, what is right, to go against the grain of anything.
Yeah. And essentially, they're selling out to the temptations of Satan, because that's always the grand bargain in every story.
Yep.
Satan offers you these material, earthly delights.
Yes.
If you would just sell your soul for eternity, all they care about is your eternity. It's only after you're dead. Don't worry, you have a lot of time. If you want to enjoy the Maserati and the pretty girl and the steak, I'll give it to you. I'll give it all to you. Just sign it away right here. Right. And the men who founded this country had that in front of them, and they rejected the devil's bargain. They did. They rejected it. Yeah. And the people like Bill Gates that we talked about today have accepted it.
Yes. And that is why I see that too. For me, there really is a spiritual war. So what do you see as being moving forward? Like what is the ultimate way? I love how you talked about combating it with ideas, with teaching people. So moving forward.
Well, the first thing is I've become quite a Marxist over these last few months.
Okay.
But what I mean by that is this. Marxism works if you ask the question, what is the goal?
Right.
And if the goal is the acquisition of power, then Marxist ideologies is the way to acquire power. Now, Ari, as a free enterprise and liberty advocate, what are you talking about?
Right.
Well, this. Marxism, through the Saul Alinsky rules for radicals techniques, teaches pick a single target, freeze it, polarize it, and destroy it.
Yes.
Completely.
Yep.
And don't let anything get you off of that target. So I believe what we need to do is take a page from that and target one elected official, one bureaucrat, one for total destruction. And what do I mean by that? Well, just imagine something like this, and then I'll tell you about my institutional target.
Okay.
Imagine if, and this is a hypothetical plan that I would love to see someone do, but it's an example of this kind of thinking.
Yeah.
Sheila Kuehl is the county supervisor of Los Angeles from our area who lives in Santa Monica who shut down our restaurants. Yes. Our restaurants are open now for various reasons, so it's somewhat of a moot point, but just think in terms of this.
Well, they're open for outdoor dining, but yeah.
I'm just, loosely, okay? Okay, so think about this. Without getting into things that are illegal, because I'm not someone who believes in the illegal techniques. I'm not illegal political activism to me is terrorism by actual definition. So I'm not talking about that. Okay. But I am talking about versions of direct action from a hypothetical standpoint. And so if a person shuts down restaurants, they're essentially shutting down pathways to food.
Yes.
And food is one of the three essentials. What's more important than food? Well, the answer is oxygen and water, right? Mm-hmm. You have to breathe. If you don't breathe in 5 minutes, you're dead. Mm-hmm. If you don't get water in 3.5 days, 4 days, you're dead. If you don't get food in 28 days, you're dead. Right. So the quickest ways of deprivation to die of the three necessary things. Right. And I'm not talking about shelter and exposure. I'm just talking about the things we need to take into our bodies. Mm-hmm. So imagine if a political activist group were to spring up and target a person like a Sheila Kuehl and said, you know, you took food from us. We're going to engage in retribution by not allowing you to have any food. Well, how would you do that, Ari? Simple. Find her house, follow her everywhere, and anytime she goes to a restaurant or grocery store or tries to eat anything, you shut down the place. You make it impossible for this person to get food. I would posit that within 7 days, she would resign.
Wow, probably.
Probably. It's basically a forced hunger strike.
Right.
People go crazy after not having food for 6 hours, let alone for 5 or 6 days.
Absolutely.
Right? And you could, remember, this isn't illegal. It has to be well funded. So you are outside her house, on the sidewalk, minding your own business. But anytime a Grubhub or a Postmate driver show up, you intercept the delivery and pay them for the food that's going to be delivered to her house, and then you leave her a couple $100 bills in an envelope that says, hey Sheila, since she's a communist, they love money,
right?
We'd like you to try to eat these $100 bills and see if they're full of the nutrition you need. I'm curious, is that working? Right? Mm-hmm. And I'm sure whether you did this to Garcetti, to Newsom, to Sheila Kuehl, to Mike Bonin, to any city councilman, to Barbara Ferrer, any bureaucrat, they would resign. And the demand is you resign, you get your food. And by the way, Maxine Waters is walking around after saying this exact thing about Trump supporters. If you see him at a gas station, chase him away. If you see him at a grocery store, shut down the place. Don't let him in. If you see him at a restaurant, get in their faces.
Yep.
So why can't we do the same
but that's
in a way that's
she's not inciting violence?
Right, but I'm not talking. But she's talking about in a violent sense. I'm talking about not violent. Yeah. I'm saying, and I'm not stealing from her either. I'm giving her fair compensation.
Yep.
I'm saying, no, you're not going into that Trader Joe's. We're shutting that down. Peaceful protest.
Yeah.
You're not going to get your food at that restaurant. We're going to go in and we're going to scream, "Our lives matter," so the waiters can't get you your food. Right. We're not going to let a Postmates driver arrive. We're going to intercept them in the public, not on your property, and we're going to pay them for the food that they are delivering. And in order to not commit the crime of theft, we're going to give you your money back in cash.
Right.
And we're going to see how long you can eat money.
Right.
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 And then when you resign, we'll give you food back. We won't interfere any longer. And the reason we're allowed to interfere is because First Amendment right, we have the ability to assemble for redress of grievances. You've given us a grievance. This is our redress. We are going to give you money, not food.
Right.
Right? Now let's expand that a little. That's just a single example.
Yeah.
Of the type of thinking I'm talking about. That's what I call Marxist power philosophies.
Yes.
Okay, and those of you out there who are hearing this, be creative. Find your own ways of doing it. And I don't know about the quasi legality. I'm doing a thought experiment.
Right. Right.
And
you're studying the opposition.
Right, I'm studying what they're planning to do to us, like Maxine Waters, and saying, well, how would I do it to them? How would we do it to them? But thinking broadly, because a Sheila Kuehl, there was a great line from the movie, I think, L.A. Confidential, which is a great L.A. noir crime story by James Ellroy. You know the movie probably. Yeah. And the scene is where Russell Crowe has the district attorney and is dangling him out of a 7th floor window.
Okay.
Right, if you remember the scene.
Yeah.
And the DA says, "Are you going to kill me?" And Russell Crowe pulls him back to his office and says, "No." You know why? Why? Because if I were to kill you, there'd just be another jerk to take your place in 10 minutes.
Yep.
And that's why a Sheila Kuehl or Garcetti is worthless to go after in these ways.
Yeah.
In some ways, because you'll just get another one.
Yep.
It's like the recall of Newsom. You're just going to get another Democrat. Probably a worse one.
Just thinking that. Yep.
But that's not the point. The point is, who are the real enemy?
Yeah.
The real enemy and the equivalent strategies that need to be figured out, I don't have that answer yet, is the California Teachers Union.
Yes.
The Teachers Union must be, I'm not going to use the word destroyed or anything, I'm going to use the word abolished. Abolished like slavery, because it is slavery.
It is.
And once the Teachers Union is abolished, then the public schools collapse, and then the information uptake, let's just say the vital organs of information uptake become liberated for future generations. So we must figure out in the aggregate how to take on the teachers union. The clearest line for this is something along the lines of a ballot initiative is put on the ballot, it passes, and it abolishes the teachers union, and then when it's challenged in court, we eventually win. So it's a long-term project, but if you abolish the teachers union, you take out the entire structure of the Democrat, wrongist, crony, corruption kind of, assemblage that's destroying California.
Okay. Yes, I think that's true.
Yeah, and whether it's protests, I mean, one of the ways I look at it is was very effective in Argentina is you had there was a U2 song about it in the 80s. You had these people, they were called the Mothers of the Disappeared. Because Argentina was being run by a dictatorship in the 70s and 80s. So political dissidents would just be disappeared. You know, that's what communists and tyrants do.
Yep.
But and this was interesting, how they handled this. The mothers of the disappeared would put on outfits of all white, and they would stand silently outside the offices of the secret police. And 1 turned to 2 to 4 to 8 to 12, to the point where after a while hundreds of mothers of the disappeared would just stand, and they wouldn't say anything. They would all wear white, and they would just stare at the heads of the security apparatus.
Wow.
And shame them.
Wow.
And eventually it led to their collapse. So one of the most effective ways of dealing with this might be the mothers of, if you will, the disappeared generation, the people of the victims of the public school bureaucracies and corruption.
Right.
Assemble at the school boards, assemble at the unions, assemble at the schools, and just stand dressed in white, silently, ignoring whether the media covers them or not. Just the people on the street see them. Right. Because nothing is worse for the political establishment than for the security officers to be seen hitting a woman who's standing silently, all in white, with a billy club. Because do you know what shows up very clearly on white? Blood. Yep. So that might be the way to do it.
Yeah, that's really powerful. And I do think that the academic institutions are definitely a really good place to start.
Yeah. But the ones in this case, the idea is the ones on major thoroughfares, a school on a busy street where people drive by and go, why are all those people in white? What are they doing? And then no matter what's censored on social media, because remember in Argentina at the time, there is no social media, there is no media coverage, there is no friendly reporter at NBC News who's going to be live on the street. We're with the mothers of the disappeared. Consuelo, what do you have to say? I want my son from the home. There was none of that.
Right.
So
you're using the virtue signaling against them.
Yes.
Shaming them. And it's the reverse,
Right. But modern virtue signaling is harboring things that aren't virtuous.
Oh, right.
Right? It's anti-virtuous.
Absolutely.
In this case, it's real virtue. The virtue of family. Where's my son? Where's my daughter? Where did their education go? Where's the money go?
My concern would be I don't feel like... I think... I have two thoughts going on here, but I think one of the great things about 2020 is that I think a lot of people have become more aware of what is happening in the school system. I don't know that a lot of people were prior to that. But then the second concern would be how many people are willing to stand up to it. I think that is my question, just constantly.
Well, that's a human nature question.
Yeah.
And the answer is very simple. Winning begets winning. So just a football analogy. When a given football team is lousy, no one watches it. When a football team is good, fans come out of the woodwork all over the place.
Sure.
Right? It's a perfect example is, okay, let's just assume, for argument's sake, that John McCain and Donald Trump had the exact same values. They didn't, but let's just say they did.
Sure.
Well, then why would the Trump base not support John McCain?
Right.
Well, they didn't, because he's a loser. Right? Okay, in the case of Trump, the man is clearly a winner. And he acts like a winner. And he demonstrates winning attitude all the time. And it becomes an addictive thing where people go, I want to be part of that.
Yes.
So how do you do this? You keep doing it until your team becomes a winner. And then once you have a few wins, more people join, more people join, more people join, until it becomes cool.
Yeah. So it all boils down to, again, the individual. Each person needs to take personal accountability, responsibility, and step forward.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, this is so awesome. Thank you so much. Do you have any closing things you want to leave us with? And definitely tell people where they can find your show.
Yeah, you can find me on SoundCloud. If you don't have an Apple device, you find it on SoundCloud.com and just search The Ari David Show. And if you have an iPhone or any other Apple device, go to the Apple podcast app or iTunes and search for The Ari David Show and subscribe to my podcast there.
Awesome. Thank you.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah, it was awesome.